Oh, right, yeah. This is it. Yeah, email request from Robert. He said because we've been doing the Glasgow or the Scotland gang war that's going on at the minute, but yeah, Robert said to understand it better, you need to go back to this. Um, yeah, Frank McPhie, which I actually thought was going to be the Traveller family, Scottish Traveller family, but it's not. It's different spelling. But the real Iceman, and yeah, Robert said that because I did think that it would be Ice Pick or something. Ice Pick was his weapon, like Richard Kuklinski or something like that. But it's not. It's the ice cream van, which I should have guessed that really because we did Joe Steele and the miscarriage of justice thing. So yeah. But anyway, this is Frank McPhie and his yeah, because Robert said he was killed with a high-powered hunting rifle, which isn't known in the UK, but is used in Ireland, and that this might be linked to paramilitary. But yeah, anyway, let's see what this is saying. Oh, and the channel's Glasgow Underworld. That's the channel. So yeah, let's go.
Frank McPhie was born in Lennoxtown on the 21st of October 1948. He was the only boy with 5 other siblings, all girls. Not much is known about his father, who was rarely home, as he had to go where he could find work. But Frank's mother was originally from a family of travellers. When Frank and his sisters would speak with their mother, they would speak in shelter.
So maybe he is McPhee then, but the spelling is different, isn't it? I thought the McPhee Travellers was EE, not IE. But I guess they are the same. Yeah, I guess it's the same. He's related to them.
Old Irish travellers' language that only they could understand. Its origin was to mislead outsiders who weren't part of the travelling community. They moved to Edinburgh when Frank was around 11 years old for 2 years. Then the McPhees moved back to Glasgow's Rough Mary Hill housing scheme to settle down. Frank's mother had been travelling most of her life and thought it should be different for her own kids, and they should be settled in one place. This is where Frank would make his notorious reputation. Frank quickly learned that Mary Hill was a bit different to the other places that he had stayed, but Frank liked it. He fell into the grips of petty crime on the hard streets. McPhee being the only boy in a house full of girls, he was getting into fights regularly, just sticking up for his sisters. But they could also stick up for themselves. As Frank got older, the crimes got more serious, and McPhee's crime of choice was armed robbery. He was also into pit bull terrier dogs and dog breeding, as well as illegal dog fighting. You see people involved in serious and organised crime breeding dogs regularly these days, but Frank had kennels out his back long before anyone had even thought of it. He was well ahead of his time when it came to that. His dogs were vicious and would fight alongside him on many occasions. In the mid-1970s, Frank had got himself involved with ice cream vans, just like most serious players at the time. He was renting one with his then brother-in-law, Archie Steen. Steen's van was in the tough Castlemilk housing scheme, and Frank, like most, was caught up in the violence that came with it. Archie Steen was in jail for the gangland murder of John Stilley, along with associate Robert Brodie. Both men also attempted to murder William Toe Elliott by shooting him. The guy that was running the van for Steen was getting hassle off a more local van owner, and it had to be sorted out. So Steen phoned Frank from Ballinny to sort it. Allegedly guns were fired, and the other ice cream van was smashed up. Frank's now infamous Iceman nickname came from this era in his life, not just for his association with ice cream vans, but for how cold and calculated he was when it came to carrying out acts of violence.
So yeah, that was.
In 1978, Frank was charged with firearms possession, apparently on the way to do another frightener for Steen of another ice cream van. This along with his part in a robbery of a local shop. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. While in the Napa, aka Peterhead Nick, he met plenty of like-minded people, but in truth, he was a bit of a late bloomer. First time he'd really been caught for anything serious, at then age 30. But that didn't slow McPhie down. In fact, he was making up for lost time, and was willing to do anything to make quick money. He controlled the tobacco and drugs in Peterhead jail. After his release from jail, he was then caught again for his part in another armed robbery of a post office. He was sentenced to another 5 years in jail in 1986. Frank was back out in the streets in early 1990 with yet more serious connections. He was really making his way up in Glasgow's Underworld. The armed robberies were becoming too risky for Frank, even after he had walked free after sitting on remand for 110 days, charged for a North East of Scotland £42,000 raid in 1990. The cash was never recovered. He had got away with it. McPhie would then try and move into the lucrative drugs game. The following year, in 1991, he was an alleged gun for hire in the notorious murders of Bobby Glover and Joe Bananas Hanlon. Frank's name had been linked to both men's murders simply because he was one of only a few in Glasgow at the time capable of carrying out such murders. I will leave you to make your own assumptions about that particular story and its links to Frank McPhie. He was known to work with Arthur Thompson, and they had apparently worked with the same paramilitary connections in Ireland as well as the Blue Angels motorcycle gang, who had links to James Kingy King, who ran guns for Thompson. McPhie and King's name were thrown into the mix by the press at the time. Me personally, I think it's a bit of a myth, even though Frank was more than capable of committing the murders. In 1992, McPhie and James King were sentenced to 8 years in jail for their part in a busted drug deal with a Newcastle-based firm at Frank's dog kennels. The cash had been put up by Arthur Thompson. The Geordies were dropping off £29,000 worth of cannabis resin, and it was cash up front. Who knows if the police had been tipped off or maybe the Geordies had been tailed to Glasgow from Tyneside. Either way, the hash would have netted McPhie and King 200 grand in the streets of Glasgow sold. McPhie was sent to Ballinnie at first, then on to HMP Perth to serve his sentence. When Frank landed in HMP Perth's A-hole, he immediately started trying to control the drugs, just like he'd done previously while locked up in Peterhead. But someone was already doing this. A nutcase from Clydebank called William Worm Toy. Toy was controlling D-Hall's drugs, and when he got moved to A-Hall in 1997, it was inevitable the two hard men would have to go against each other. Toy's family were well known in Clydebank, and William was in jail for murdering Edward Maxwell, who was going to court as a witness against his brother Gavin Toy for killing another gangland rival of theirs, John McRae. Gavin Toy was still convicted of murdering John McRae, so William Toy had basically murdered Maxwell for nothing. Apparently the tension started almost instantly, with Toy trying to dig out whoever it was in control, and of course, McPhie declared it was him. Apparently Toy had invited McPhie and another man to his cell to talk about it. McPhie cautiously agreed but didn't trust Toy. After all, he was in for a brutal murder, so McPhie would have taken a pill. It's not actually known what was said or happened in Toy's cell between him and Frank McPhie that day, but by the time the meeting was over, William Toy had been stabbed through the heart and died before they could get him to a hospital. The last people in his cell or seen near Toy was allegedly Frank McPhie and another man named Neil Monroe, who was supposed to be a peacekeeper between the two men, but Monroe was on McPhie's side. Both McPhie and Monroe were charged with William Toy's murder, but the alleged witness refused to say that Frank McPhie and Neil Monroe were the last people he had seen leaving Toy's cell as he approached to have a cup of tea, earlier arranged by himself and Toy. So the verdict was ruled not proven, and Frank McPhie and Neil Monroe walked on the murder charge at Perth Sheriff Court. When Frank was released from Perth prison, his notorious reputation...
I don't know, he is, yeah, not playing about. He must have just gone in there and thought, he's going to do me over. I'll get him first. But this is some crazy shit. This is like, yeah. Because now he's going to have beef with that family. And if they're shooting people that are going to, witnesses going to court, yeah, they ain't going to be happy about that.
Had grown even more. After all, he had just walked on a prison murder. Some say he thought he was invincible. While he was in prison, his friend from Ballarnock, Colin McY, befriended a man called Christopher McGrory. McGrory from Lennoxtown allegedly had money, so Frank convinced McKay to get McGrory involved in drug dealing as a financial backer. McGrory agreed. He had visited Frank up in Perth along with Colin McKay, but McKay and McGrory were already dabbling in the sale of cocaine, and Frank wanted a piece of the action now he was out. Truth be told, McKay and McGrory were good friends, but that changed when Frank got involved. McKay was too busy trying to please Frank and was becoming increasingly more distant to McGrory. Even so, McGrory still made McKay his best man at his wedding and Frank his usher. It was at McGrory's wedding, over in Ireland, that they made a connection through a mutual friend of McGrory's. Christopher McGrory had got in over his head. He just couldn't handle Frank's short temper and his level of violence, and Colin McKay's willingness to participate in this violence along with him. McGrory was becoming uncomfortable, so he had already told his wife he planned to do his own thing after this deal was done. The coke was coming from one of Frank's Irish contacts that he had made at McGrory's wedding. 2 kilos of it. But when Frank went to pick it up, there was only 1 kilo there. So Frank and Colin said to McGrory, but Frank underestimated Christopher McGrory. McGrory had phoned the Irish contact because McPhie was trying to make him pay for the kilo even though it was missing, and McGrory had told the Irish mob he suspected that Frank had took it. Either way, the drugs had to be paid for. The Irish drug dealers had then phoned up McPhie, then told him about Christopher McGrory's phone call to them claiming that Frank had stole the kilo. It's not known where the kilo of cocaine went or who took it, but the Irish mob didn't care. They apparently told Frank to deal with it or they would send 2 people over that would. The last time Christopher McGrory was seen alive, he was being led into the back of his own white transit van by 2 men at Lambhill Stables. He was found dead.
That's some cold-blooded shit, kidnapping someone with their own van.
In the back of his van, just outside Douglaston Golf Club, Mulgai, on a secluded road. He had been strangled to death by someone's bare hands. McGrory's best man and his usher at his wedding, literally a few months prior, were both charged with his murder. After the trial at the High Court in Glasgow, the jury returned yet another not proven verdict for Frank McPhie and now McKay. Apparently a crowd cheered in the gallery after the verdict was read out. Frank was now 50 years old, and after yet another not proven for a second murder in the space of 2 years, Frank really was on another level. He was always dangerous, yes, one of the most dangerous men in Glasgow, or a vicious bully depending on who you spoke to, but this was different. He was taking on all comers, including the Daniel and Lyons families, for control of the drugs trade in the north of the city. He allegedly slashed one of the family's younger members across the face just to prove a point. Then after it, took himself round to the corner from his house on Guthrie Street to the family's Lockburn Road scrapyard as if to say, if anyone wants to do anything about it, well, here I am. The cocaine in the deal with the Irish still hadn't been paid for, and Frank also allegedly gave someone a real tanking outside a pub to do with another local hardman in Daniel Heavy, John McCabe. In April 2000, Frank was issued with a threat to life warning by the CID. The 2 offers delivering it to him at his ground floor flat in Guthrie Street, Maryhill, recalled McPhie's attitude towards them, and the warning itself. He treated it with a carefree attitude and was more bothered about them coming to his door, annoying him with empty threats from so-called police intelligence about a contract being taken out on his life. If Frank was worried, he certainly didn't show it.
Yeah, but that's part and parcel of the game. That don't mean, unless you're like an absolute lunatic. Yeah, you like, that, but then that's a possibility always, I suppose, in that life, that you can die. So being told there's a threat against your life, it's like, well, yeah, no shit. He seems to be upsetting everyone. But I was thinking, how does this tie in with the Lions and Daniels? But here we go.
The following month, on May 10th, Frank woke up and went about his daily business as normal. He jumped in his van and went to meet a friend up Posel. While he was there, he realised a blue car was following him. A high-speed chase through Glasgow developed. Frank had managed to evade the car chasing him, and as he got back to his house, he stepped out of his van and paused for a brief few seconds to look around for the car that had been chasing him. As he did this, Frank was hit and killed by a single shot to the head from a sniper's rifle from the drying area of the high-rise flats across the street from his house. This was no run-of-the-mill shooting. This was a professional contract killing. Frank was considered so dangerous at the time, whoever did this had to make sure it was done right, because Frank would no doubt be back for revenge. Frank died in the street while being cradled by his 11-year-old son, Frank Jr. John McCabe was charged with Frank McPhie's murder. The Clark brothers, who were friendly with McPhie, were also questioned over his killing, but the murder charge against McCabe was ultimately dropped through lack of evidence. John McCabe was a serious player and hard man, but the shooting with a sniper rifle was considered out his depth. John was an easy option for the cops, as he only stayed about 200 yards away from Frank and had run-ins with him, along with most of the other known faces in Glasgow. So who killed Frank McPhie? A gangster so dangerous it had to be done with a telescopic rifle from 100 yards away. Was it Irish paramilitaries? One of Glasgow's two big families he had upset? The failure to pay back Christopher McGrory's Irish cocaine connection that went wrong? Relatives of McGrory? Who knows? But someone wanted him dead and got their wish. Frank McPhie's murder is still unsolved.
Yeah, that was pretty fascinating, to be fair. That's if there's a movie, let me know the movie. 'Cause I know Paul Ferris has a movie about him, but that's a great movie because again, that's like an Essex Boys type movie where they're going around upsetting all the wrong people, and then once you die, then it becomes well, who? There was a trail of what 5 big families. The boy, the mate he killed in prison's family, the Lyons and the Daniels, the Irish cocaine connection. I'm guessing as well, McGrory would have had people that weren't happy that they killed him. But that's very interesting. Yeah, that was some professional shit. That was that's what Robert said as well. He's like, I think he even said that there's never been one other hunting high-powered hunting rifle. Could be travelers as well. Could be, but that's yeah. It seems very very perfect. Like it's very. Mm, like the one in London, Mark Duggan, when he killed with a sniper rifle as well. Yeah, that was fascinating. That was fascinating. Yeah, another person he upset was the bouncer he bashed up, the Daniels member. Yeah, yeah, that's the trouble when you have that lifestyle. Like, it really is a well, take your pick. Who wanted this person? Because that's the first thing. Who wanted this person dead? Well, it seemed like a lot of people. Yeah, and it shows you that Ireland is and Scott like well, Ireland's crime has been connected all over the UK anyway. But yeah, as I said, hunting rifles never been used in the UK, but has in Ireland. Mm. I was thinking though as well at the time because like you had it after the Second World War with all the gangs where they were all like trained killers basically. I was thinking, I suppose in Ireland you would have had trained marksmen and shit for fighting us, and vice versa. There would have been British people that had military training that went into the life of crime. See, there might be someone who's just an ex-military guy from somewhere who's like, yeah, come and do it. Yeah, but yeah, very interesting. But yeah, that's the reaction. Sweet.